We may be joined by some others that arrived late, but let's go ahead and get this started. If you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, put our right hand over our heart, and I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Today we have Karina helping us out with the inspiration. Karina, when you're ready, we'd love to hear from you.
All right. Wise words of Mother Teresa today. These are the few ways we can practice humility: to speak as little as possible of oneself, to mind one's own business, not to manage other people's affairs, to avoid curiosity, to accept contradictions and corrections cheerfully, to pass over the mistakes of others, to accept insults and injuries, to accept being slighted, forgotten, and disliked, to be kind and gentle, even under provocation, never to stand on one's dignity, to choose always the hardest.
Well, thank you. I think there's a lot to be said about what Mother Teresa had enlightened us with today. Welcome, Chuck. Nice to see you. We now have, Judith found us an amazing recording. No one has to sing, but we get to appreciate this very timely Zoom recording of Stars and Stripes Forever. So Judith, you want to hit the video?
And when I hit it, please somebody let me know that you can hear it.
Okay.
Okay, let me put the
that was
invitation
cool.
back.
Yay! That gets your blood pumping, doesn't it? Except for the dog behind the woman with the piccolo. That dog's blood was not pumping. Did you see the dog? Totally napped
I've actually done one of these Zoom. I'm in a choir, and that's really hard to do. Like
Yes.
the technical behind it, it's really hard. So, and that was the Navy band.
Love the brass. It's awesome. Thank you, Judith, for finding that for us.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have welcome. Aline was already kind of introduced, but maybe we could just do a rewind of that because I don't know that everyone had joined the meeting. Aline?
Yes, hi. So Aline David Morin, and I'm the president of the Bonita Kiwanis Club. I'm very excited to be here. I know, we are very involved club, and we always trying to help not just our club, our community, but San Diego. Because at the end, I think we're all one big club, and so we like to help each other. So I'm excited to be here today and learn more about what's happening in our city. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us. All right, we're just going to jump right into it. Carl's got his lunch going, so we're happy you're refueling. What's for lunch today, Chuck?
Now, how do you know I have my lunch going? I haven't taken a single bite.
I don't want to be hangry, Susan. I'm over here on the side slamming it down here fast so I can listen to this great speaker, Phil from SANDAG. Apologize for that.
No worries. It is a lunch, so feel free to enjoy.
2
o'clock for me.
Oh, that's true. Looks like, and maybe Jay's having lunch too, so awesome.
I'm having shrimp pasta, by the way, from the Ronald McDonald House, and it's great. So there.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, we're going to have Carl introduce our speaker from SANDAG. So Carl, it's all yours.
Got it. Yeah, it's my pleasure today to introduce Phil Trom. Phil is the principal regional planner at the San Diego Association of Governments. We all know it as SANDAG, the Transportation Planning, Financing, and Coordination Agency for the San Diego region. Philip manages the long-range transportation, goods movement, and binational planning section at SANDAG. And he's also the staff lead for several elements of San Diego Forward, the regional plan, which we'll hear about today. San Diego Forward is the long-range integrated transportation and comprehensive plan for the San Diego area through 2050. Prior to his work on the regional plan, he managed the short-range transit division of SANDAG, and he's also previously worked for transportation consulting firms in the Bay Area and San Diego. Philip's a graduate of UC San Diego, has a master's degree in urban planning from San Jose State, and teaches transportation planning in the master's program at SDSU. So please welcome Philip Trom.
Great. Thanks, Carl. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. Really appreciate it. And great to be with all of you. I know we're not in person, and hopefully in the future we can all get together. But really excited to be here to share the long-range transportation vision of the region and kind of put it in context and share what it's all about. And certainly, have time for questions. So I think I have about 15 minutes or so. But definitely want to share all the good news that's happening for regional transportation and sort of, what you should all expect. Looking forward, as Carl said, we kind of look out to the year 2050, but it's sort of every year in between. So there's a lot happening. And would be happy to answer any question to the extent I'm available or knowledgeable on other SANDAG initiatives too. If you've seen projects, I know Judith and I were talking a little bit about Del Mar Bluffs and that kind of thing. So happy to help answer that or steer you toward that answer too, if I can at the end here. So what I'll be doing is sharing a PowerPoint presentation. So I'll go ahead and start getting that kind of reloaded here. And I have to make sure I share sound for that video at the end. But yeah, I have about 20 slides here. We'll kind of move quickly through it. But we've been sharing the slide deck over the last couple months as we've had this new transportation plan. Let's see. Oh, sorry, I'm starting mid slide deck here somehow. Let me just redo that again here. Okay, sorry about that. I've been Carl said, I teach at SDSU in the evenings in the master's program, and we've been mostly, with the like half semester this last spring semester was in person, but now the summer session's back to virtual. So I should be like an expert at these, but I'm still not a Zoom expert, admittedly. Yeah, I wanted to share the long range vision. So, basically every 4 years, our San Diego region, so we're considered a one county region for transportation planning purposes. So SANDAG shepherds the long range vision for transportation for our entire county. So that's all 18 cities plus the county as land use authorities. In addition to what's kind of interesting, we have 18, just like we have 18 cities, we have 18 independent tribal nations in our region too. It's kind of a fun fact. So we're about 3 million people in our region, expected to grow by almost another million as we get toward 2050. And so as you kind of figure with your, your transportation needs, you're kind of crossing probably, sometimes you don't even know it, right? Crossing city and municipal boundaries all the time. So transportation kind of makes sense to happen largely at the regional level. So that's where SANDAG fits in. We have peer and partner agencies kind of all around us too, like Los Angeles planning agency, and they're smaller because they're so big. They have, half the state's population in what's considered the Los Angeles planning area. We have partners in Orange County and in Riverside and Imperial to the east that are all kind of independently doing transportation as well. So lots of collaboration, but so much of what we do in travel kind of happens either in San Diego County or adjacent with the border. And there's a lot of really cool work cross-border. So that's kind of who we are as an agency, and we're tasked by the federal government to put together a long-range transportation plan every 4 years. And so that's what I'm really kind of the bulk of what I'll be sharing today with you. And we have a new vision. So with a new executive director, Hassan Akrada, that started a few years back, we kind of started from scratch to really figure out how we could do transportation differently. And really with the ultimate goal of providing the best solutions and like a suite of kind of, various alternatives that people would have for either their work commute or other, social, recreational, retail kind of trips. So we kind of, took that into this, what we considered a new vision for our region. And that ultimately ended with the 2021 Regional Transportation Plan, or 2021 Regional Plan. And that was adopted this last December. So kind of about halfway into the first year of implementation of it. Like I said, we do it every 4 years. So we'll gear up again for some kind of update of this. This was, like I said, really a starting from scratch kind of effort. So this is just a, a view of kind of, obviously with Kiwanis downtown, the kind of, this area quite well. And those lines are meant to depict just various different alternative modes of transportation and looking at sort of major hubs. That's where that like sort of spotlight is around the airport area. And the goal of this was really, to look toward an unprecedented, visionary investment in transportation in our region, something that works for everyone and with social equity considerations and looking at underinvested and disadvantaged communities. But with real, fundamentally real options that could help us, meet our environmental targets. So we have some pretty strict targets for greenhouse gas reductions at the state level, and then air quality emissions at the federal level. But really, looking at authentic solutions to transportation problems in our region. And so a lot of that is, as you could expect, transportation isn't a thing. I always tell this to my class, it's we need transportation because we don't sort of live and work on top of everything we do, right? So so part of that is in data collection. I know a couple of you, hopefully, I know Judith and I were talking offline about participating in the survey. That we collect information about where people are going and kind of trip diary information. We also have an opportunity to buy data from various data vendors that really looks at where people need to go and then how we could plan for different services to meet those needs. So that's fundamentally what the regional plan attempts to do. So, we know our region is like nowhere else in the country or even the world. We have a rich history. We have binational connections. We have lots of wonderful open space that people cherish and value. And we have diverse communities too. So, so it's really, this transportation plan is meant to sort of enhance that and respect and appreciate all of that. So that's kind of, thinking about about our needs and who we are as a region and what our kind of DNA as a region is. But then how can we think differently about transportation? And a lot of it is thinking about what are the major connections, what options people have today, what's working, what's not working, and how we can invest in different ways to both achieve, social equity targets, greenhouse gas emissions, other air quality emissions, but really get people, around as quickly and cheaply as possible, right? So that those are some major tenets about what we know people value when we talk to them and we survey them about transportation. So a lot of this was thinking differently and in using some pretty robust data sets to inform us on where people travel. So over time, we know, innovation, like kind of the concept of innovation has changed. Thinking back to the Industrial Revolution, and we had, a lot of robust transit, even in California, existed in sort of the late 1800s, early 1900s. But we had significant highway expansion, which has, caused both constraints and opportunities. But we're in kind of this era of technology enhancement, right? Where our cell phone is almost like the latest, kind of big advancement in transportation. Who would have thought a long time ago, right? A phone would be transportation. But in terms of how data is sent and collected and information is shared with you, like the traveling public, we can make sure to leverage transportation to make our systems work more effectively and efficiently, and then make sure everyone knows what options are available to them as we travel. So innovation has been this huge thing, and obviously over the last 10 years, especially with the smartphone, that's kind of expanded to include so much more, right? It's like transportation isn't just your car or your bus pass, it's really your access to mobility in so many different ways. So wanted to share that's kind of part of it, and just a little expansion of that, like the Internet of things that are connected, how we leverage that and can use that, big data, using data to understand people's needs, and even as we move forward with like connected and autonomous vehicles, how artificial intelligence and machine learning can happen. So this isn't really the transportation plans of old. We hire sort of mathematicians and data scientists in planning now, which is really fun as a practitioner to be part of all of that. So that would be considered part of the next OS, or next operating system, of how our whole system can be connected, almost sort of in the cloud of information. And a lot of that information could be sent even at this, like this picture here depicting the signal level, like how we can make signals better and access it through local streets and roads and those types of connections, and to the freeway system too, right? And so it's both big and small. Another key aspect of the plan, so that's one of the tenets, right, is the technology and the connectivity. Another is what we call flexible fleets. So traditionally, anything other than auto transportation really relied on solving what we called the first and last mile dilemma. So if you took the bus or transit, you had to get there, right? Get to the bus stop, and usually from your destination, you had to walk or somehow get to your final destination. So, we thought differently about that, using this data, where people are going, and thinking about how transit and other options could happen maybe in sort of the high speed middle of the trip, but how you get people to and from those kind of, first and last miles is really important. So you do that with technology, you can do that with smaller vehicles, and even like shared, bike fleets and that kind of thing. So that's a new enhancement in how we're thinking about transportation. And investments in those doesn't cost a lot of money to do those, but it's that really critical last step and first step. Another is thinking about land use and how cities kind of interact with the transportation system. And so we frame that, used to be called smart growth, and it still is in a way, but how basically transportation, smart growth and transportation hubs can be done under sort of a bigger concept of mobility hubs. So where there's major centers of activities, big and small, but activity nonetheless, where transportation can kind of intermix and people can sort of switch in and out of modes quickly and efficiently and cheaply. So that's a way to do that. So this is one picture of kind of a bigger mobility hub. This is another one you can kind of figure, this is like, downtown San Diego could look something like that, obviously with some pictures of our existing rapid bus services downtown. And how we kind of integrate both rapid bus and rail. This is the trolley, obviously, and then commuter rail services. So that's another one of these pillars called Transit Leap, how we do transit. And one of the big takeaways on transit is we noticed that through the surveys and just looking at even the transit system, the transit can take up to 4, 5, 6, sometimes 10 times longer than the car trip. So how can you kind of make that work with the first last mile solutions to provide auto equivalent transit service affordably, and that would be attractive for people to use? And so that's the connection to this, you know, fast and flexible transit system in the plan. And I think this is the last kind of pillar of it, is what we call complete corridors. So looking at mostly our highway, our state route and interstate system, we know we can't really build ourselves out of congestion. There's not a lot of room. And a lot of the studies in transportation planning over the last 10 years have showed that in urban areas or in cities over, you know, kind of, you know, larger that like we are, where there's a lot of dynamic trip making decisions that happen kind of all the time and on the fly and sometimes very complicated ways, that when you add more lanes to the freeway, they have a temporary benefit, but then they just fill up again and you're kind of back to where you started, but you sort of had that sunk cost already. And then there's additional environmental, pollution and climate change pollutants through greenhouse gas emissions that come with that. So thinking differently about our corridors means that, looking at how we manage, this is like how we can, have parallel transit facilities, like we have the coaster on the coast, how you can add maybe more than one carpool lane, like we have an I-15, how you can manage it at different times of the day, how you could provide priority for transit, how you could provide priority for high occupancy vehicles and that kind of thing. And, in the future with autonomous technology, how you could sort of roll that all together. So that's what we call complete corridors, is really thinking about sort of like almost like an optimization or efficiency exercise, how you can get more person throughput rather than vehicle throughput, how you can manage that. So like I said, I-15 is kind of one example, the North I-15, I mean, really like from the 163 up to the 78 corridor, kind of how to do that more broadly across all of our state routes and interstate system. So this is like an oblique kind of angle at kind of looking out, from the ocean out east, but really kind of trying to capture our whole county. So this is what the regional plan projects look like, kind of in this exploded view, I guess you could say. So the mobility hubs, these concentrations of places where we think transportation and land use can come together. That's a little bit of what's there. And then that blue in those outer areas is how we connect that first and last mile trip based on data and where people are traveling today. How we add the highway system and do that in a complete corridors managed sense, and looking at high occupancy lanes and different connectors and how you put transit there. And that's this next line of this, like, I think it should hopefully shows it like a real bright green. That's the rapid bus system that does kind of, exist a little bit today, like down to the South Bay. We have from Otay Ranch to downtown, there's a rapid service, and then the one I actually take from Poway to downtown is the I-15 service. But doing this, like I said, more broadly to match the complete corridor investments. And then light rail, expanding that in our region and sort of, folding it into future other transportation projects. We have light rail on the trolley system that, goes down to the border all the way up to UCSD now, which is a new project. If you haven't ridden it, it's really a neat service. If you ever get a chance to or need to get up to UCSD from downtown, it's a good way to do it. And then out on the 8 corridor and the 94 corridor with the existing trolley. So that's kind of looking at how to sort of enhance the light rail investments that are out there today. And then commuter rail. So ultimately, what are these higher speed, longer haul connections? And not, this isn't the state high speed rail. This is just looking at like how you could do that North Coast corridor with the coaster, and sometimes we have Amtrak coming through our region. How you do that potentially in more places in our region. So that's a little bit of an exploded view. It's a pretty broad portfolio of projects and programs, but this hopefully gives you a little sense of what that's all about. Some of the more near-term things that are happening, we're building a new port of entry in East Otay Mesa. So currently, passenger travel, and it's a lot, right? It's kind of the equivalent. Another fun fact, right, is like the San Ysidro travel across the border is the equivalent of the San Diego International Airport, LAX, and SFO combined annually, which is just a huge volume of trips that are happening across the border at San Ysidro. But just to the east, we have commercial traffic and pedestrian or passenger traffic. And this is kind of alleviating the congestion from mostly the commercial needs and having a new port of entry at East Otay Mesa. So that's currently under construction and would be projected to be open by 2024. So just a couple years. And there's a lot of stuff that's already happened down there around the current port of entry. The Bluffs in Del Mar. So this is another project to both sort of shore up and stabilize the bluffs so we maintain the freight and passenger needs on that corridor, but then start thinking inland of other options where you can do that differently to be resilient, I guess you could say, and sustainable over time, because we know those bluffs are eroding away quickly. Central mobility hub, how we look at main points of connection around downtown, and you've probably heard some of that. That could be in various locations. I think we're really looking at something that we could do as a region and have a major connection to the airport, to downtown, to Old Town, and kind of everywhere in between over the next several years. Housing is a really exciting area. You know, SANDAG doesn't have land use authority, but working with our cities, there's incentives to build more affordable housing in our region. That's money coming through the state. That is something we're propping up too. Connecting with transportation, and then studying some real specific corridors. So the purple line is like an inland version of the trolley that goes down to the border, kind of an 805-ish, and within the community alignment that would go to Mission Valley and points north to the employment centers in Kearney Mesa. Also Blue Line Express, how we can kind of maximize the investment in the rail corridor right off the I-5 South. And free transit. You might have heard that youth 18 and under can ride transit for free in our region. That's kind of a one-year pilot that we're doing and looking to expand that potentially up through the university age, so 24 and under. So lots of conversations around that, but there is a pilot happening right now. Digital equity, we know with COVID, you know, kind of the way we commute, sort of like we're doing all of us today, you know, we're kind of commuting, you know, virtually to see each other and share information. So we're looking at how we bridge digital divides, how we make sure high-speed connectivity happens in all neighborhoods, not just select ones. So that's new. So, and I think hopefully we'll push this presentation on to you if you're interested, but there's some ways to connect with us and hear more about these projects as they're implemented. Now that we have a more robust vision, we're all excited to make it real and make it happen. So with that, just a couple minute video, and hopefully I didn't kind of overstay my welcome on the presentation, but I'll start a video if that's okay with all of you.
Where to?
Let us show you.
To the 10,000 connections that bring San Diego together.
To the people and the places that make this.
Sorry if it's pausing. I'm trying to preserve my bandwidth, but I'm interrupting it. Sorry. Start it again.
Region like nowhere else.
These connections get us to our jobs,
To the homes we live in and the neighborhoods we visit.
but they're much more than that. They're part of a bigger plan.
A transportation plan that gives San Diego more options.
More access and more ways to be together.
What's more is that we're not starting from scratch.
We're taking what's already working and making it better.
With big moves towards new technology, the future is in reach.
So how do we do it?
With big dreams, smart moves, and by including everyone.
It's a plan that will drive us and move us.
But most of all, it will connect us.
All right, so that's all for me from the presentation side, but happy to hand it back over to Judith or others and happy to answer any questions or engage in a broader transportation dialogue, whatever you like.
Go ahead, Doug.
I have a question. I understand that there's probably a lot of constituencies involved in dealing with that heavy rail over the bluffs in Del Mar. Is there even a soft timeline for moving that off the bluffs?
Yeah, I think the plan has by 2030. So over the next 10 years, and there's studies underway to look at alignments and really commit to that. That's why it's one of those next 5 large implementation projects. That I think we hope to have a preferred alternative over the next couple of years And I can, if you're interested in that specifically, get you in touch with the project manager. I know that's both short up, make it work, but in the next few years, really understand what's going to happen there.
That's okay. I have a belief that's not founded in any evidence that you guys are going to get the bluff collapse before there's a rerouting, but that's just me.
Oh, I hope you're wrong, Doug.
Yeah, I bet you are.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong too. I know it looks precarious. I know the angles there on some of the pictures. You've probably seen it from the UT. It looks like the rail is like a foot away.
I'm never going to ride that.
The soldier piles are, I've been told, are super deep. That there's been some shaving off of that last part leading up to the pilings. That I've been told that's really safe, but it is alarming to see those exposed pilings now, for sure.
Thank you.
Hey,
Yeah,
Phil, how about a real life example? You said you took the rapid transit down from Poway into downtown. You're sitting at your office at 9 o'clock and suddenly you say, oh, I need to be at a meeting in Kearney Mesa at 1. How do you get there? How do you make that transition today? And what would it be like for you maybe 5 or 6 years in the future?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And that really points to, having a integrated system that isn't just for like the peak hour commute or just where you live. We know people do need spontaneous trips, and especially if they have lunch appointments. I mean, it's easy for me in downtown to go get lunch somewhere, but that's a great point. And I think some of these are like how you do, like at SANDAG, we have a fleet of cars, right? So I can reserve it, go up to a presentation to Kearney Mesa, but not thinking about that from a public system perspective, shared transportation fleet. So maybe part of that flex fleet design, that there would be sort of all day access to shared services. I know we've had fits and starts of, the sort of temporary car rental, but how that could happen, how you could have all day rapid that's pretty close to the express commute. That's going to be, there's a lot of money that operations takes, but if we knew that, if you knew, say, like if you came down the I-15 corridor, went to downtown, needed to get up to Kearney Mesa, that there would be a bus that would be, say maybe 25 minutes, it could take you 15 minutes to drive from downtown. You knew it was close enough to choose it, right? So it's finding those sweet spots where you're not committing to all day high speed everywhere, right? Which wouldn't be sustainable. But do we have land uses that are significantly clustered, like a Kearney Mesa would make sense, right? How could you do that effectively? So it's a like a host or a bouquet of solutions, I would say, but it's a really important to think about those real-time examples, and that's kind of, we obsess about that as planners, but not just assuming everybody has a bunch of private fleet vehicles, right? That's kind of the easy way out of that. So just thinking how you do that better in a public system.
Yeah, and your first and last mile comment would be absolutely key for me, because in Kearney Mesa, where I currently am, from the South County, yeah, first and last that's exactly where we would need to focus to make it usable for me.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, Carl.
Yeah, well, following up on that and the flex fleets, I've thought for a long time that the use of different sized autonomous vehicles that could, if I wanted to, let's use Chuck's example. He's in Kearney Mesa and he needs to come downtown for lunch. An autonomous vehicle could be scheduled to pick him up, maybe just a little one, and with one that would sit 1 or 2 people. And then if there was nobody else going downtown, well, it would take him right downtown. But if a lot of people were, it might shoot over to, a kind of a junction spot that where 4 or 5 of those little vehicles might come together. Everybody jump in a shuttle and go downtown together. Kind of a coordinated communication system because a lot of the cost is going to be in people, to run those systems. And they've got that stuff working in airports now. I think Heathrow in England has a system like that moves people around. It's so what's going on with that in your mind, and is that kind of future something that you think might happen in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I definitely think it's near term. It requires some of the autonomous technology to mature a bit more, which it's certainly with Waymo and others are underway, I think. But one example I like to look at is like the Uber and Lyft. Those services aren't even 10 years old, and they're kind of something ubiquitous in the system, right? We think we can just, we got our phone, all this perfect information we kind of carry with us around. You can schedule it and it picks you up. Right now with a driver, obviously COVID, kind of like that kind of was a wrinkle in that system. But ultimately, you're spot on. I think the ability, that's one area where technology can enable those types of services. Potentially, Dubai is doing something like this where they have those kind of pods in a sense, or you know, what would be like a future Uber and Lyft connected vehicles on a corridor, and they kind of break off and split off. So there may be something to sort of leverage, you know, vehicles that could be sort of combined and then, you know, separated to, that's a little bit more, you know, super high tech. But I think certainly, you know, developing an integrated system that has that flexibility is huge. Our highways are kind of blank canvases, right? They're just concrete, you know, they can be retrofitted with all the fiber and 5G that we want. So we are pretty lucky that we have interstate and state routes pretty close to our major destinations. So, you know, those will obviously play a big role, but, you know, private sector, Ubers and Lyfts, maybe that has, you know, maybe that's institutionalized, maybe that's the future of transit, but certainly having a flexible system that can absorb that.
You know, when you think about it, the block to autonomous vehicles is us driving our cars, and you know, you've got the infrastructure in place for all the autonomous vehicles you need. If it could be put together, unfortunately, we're not going to give up our cars right away. I know Jay Leno, who, as you probably know, is quite a car guy, says that in the future it'll all be autonomous in the urban areas, and you'll take an autonomous vehicle out to the country, and that's where you'll jump in your Mustang or whatever, and you'll drive it around to the country roads, kind of like somebody has a boat and they go down to the docks today to ride their boat. That's what he thinks you're going to do with cars. That's obviously a long way away. Hey, well, I've still got the mic. Could you talk a little bit more about the Grand Central Station concept? It looks like the Navy has bailed out of the whole concept, and I wonder what you're thinking about how the other option, where the parking cars aren't, where the rental car building is now.
Yeah, certainly. It's been something, you know, obviously you've seen the news, and you know, the Navy partnership kind of dissolved, but that was an idea to leverage that Navwar facility, the former Sparwar area. I think, you know, the idea of that, or what was intriguing, was how it's close to downtown, close to the airport. You know, how do we get better connectivity is really the problem to solve. So potentially a major transit hub could happen, you know, near downtown. It could be closer to Middletown or airport. Certainly looking at all different sites currently. I think it's important to remember, though, that like kind of where we all started with this is like not having, you know, complaint of not having transit to the airport. If we do have those spontaneous trips that we need with transit, you know, how people are sort of, they can get to downtown, maybe Kearny Mesa, but how do you sort of make a, you know, synergistic environment around downtown and really emphasize like how much investment and how many, you know, businesses and housing units are downtown. So that's the kind of the goal to solve with that. I don't know where we'll land, which facility. It's funny, we're kind of back to where we started, right? We started looking at locations actually in downtown, and we're kind of back there in some ways right now. But certainly if that's an interest of the group, I don't weekly work on that project. I kind of, like you, in some ways, get updates, you know, monthly, and you know, to the extent you kind of follow it, it's been in the news, obviously, you know, for the past several years, but I could link you all up with sort of the absolute latest with that one. But I know it's something we're trying to solve.
Personal reason, because I worked on a project called the Intermodal Transportation Center in back in 2007 and 2008, where we created a $350,000 study, an integrated plan to pull all those pieces together, and you know, and including the airport was involved, and SANDAG and all that. I just wondered if that plan has surfaced in any way, shape, or form to your knowledge.
I'll ask. No, I had heard about that, but that would make sense to kind of dust that off and take a look again. Yeah, thanks, Carl. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll follow up with I think you, Judith, on just at least get you guys the like I said, I'm not in that project team directly, so I'll get that to you.
And then Doug and I'll walk the bluffs.
Yeah, and then let me know what you think. For sure. No, but I mean, truly, that, like, those two areas in Otay Mesa, just trying, the reason why there's a slide each for those, that's something that I know our director is committed to solving. So whether it's finding a spot and, you know, building a mobility hub close to downtown, or making sure the bluffs are safe for, you know, currently safe, and then, you know, ultimately solved over time. Real solutions there.
Phil, you mentioned about the access to the airport, and my family and I live in North County Coastal. And so for many years, when we would take an extended trip, we'd park in the long-term parking. Well, there is no more of that, really.
Right.
So we have now since taken the train to Old Town and then caught the little shuttle, which has worked well. And there are some, I would say there's a couple of hiccups in terms of, from a customer standpoint, knowing which side of the rail to be on, because it's counterintuitive to me. Like, are you on the west side or the east side to go north or south? And some of the signage is a little wonky. Again, just my own personal issue. But I love the idea of trying to get more of that public transportation for things like the airport. And making it seamless so it isn't a big headache to have to take that kind of trip.
Yeah, and something like, and one thing with that is the parking dilemma, right? You probably think like, oh, can I park my car at Oceanside for how many days till they tow it? Or, it's like, that's part of the Flex Fleets thing is like, and kind of Uber and Lyft do it today, right? You could do that, get to the train, but how could that be all sort of one app and one, that's the transit system is your door-to-door solution, right? That's kind of the idea with that technology enabled. And they call that mobility as a service, or MaaS, and like Finland and some other areas have done it where they are I've heard this term come up, like the Netflix of transportation. You have a subscription fee if it's something that you're doing regularly. Obviously an airport trip is kind of, a few times a year or whatever, but how do you have like less a la carte and more something rolled into very usable, door to door, where all you got to do is get your bags packed to your door and then the trip is taken care of after that. That's kind of, ultimately what we'd like to see. But currently you see that the end of that trip, right? When you get close to downtown, you aren't close enough to the airport. And that's like what Carl's kind of talking about with essential mobility, of how we could do that part better too. So, yeah.
And I have a question about buses. So many of the buses are virtually empty. This big vehicle that's consuming a ton of gas is empty. Has there been consideration to right sizing the vehicles, maybe have them more frequent? We could hire more people to drive the buses, make them smaller and electric, just to be more conservative with the fuel and maybe give some jobs and better transportation options. Is that something that's looked into?
Absolutely. And this is part of the faster, more flexible, approach to transit. The reason why they aren't as, especially like you're in North County, right? That's a much more spread out area. It's hard to serve people effectively, but when you have service that is, 5 times, worse, or whatever metric you want, like takes 5 times longer on the bus, you just don't get people that have a choice, right? So you have transit dependent riders, or are mostly your riding, population. And so that's that's going to be a smaller group of riders, but an important group from an equity standpoint too. So it's one of those things we talk a lot about, and we think, really hard about is how you get service that's attractive to everyone, right? But that's still equitable. But at the end of the day, when you get more people on a vehicle, it's cheaper all the way around, right? So how can we use data to really to basically, almost like the private sector does, like build services that people want and are attractive, right? So find those solutions. And we found that, like I talked a little bit about the big data thing, and we get census data. A lot of you have filled out the surveys that we randomly, randomly pick addresses for that. But we do get like, and it's anonymized, but we get cell phone data. We get about 80 million cell phone records a day, right? So we can see how, and it's snapped to basically like a census tract kind of information, but you can see somebody's like traveling from this track to this other track. And what's cool, and I this is like a broader presentation, more technical, but when you actually look at that data, it looks like a spider, almost like a spider web, but you see what's, and again, anonymized, it's not meant to be like to find somebody, a specific person. What's really cool when you have millions of records like that, you can break it down by time of day and it's still millions of records. And you see these kind of thicker lines of where people really are going. And then you can design the service to meet those links. plus the flex fleets, the first last mile. So that's why our transportation projection on our transit network looks so fundamentally different than any years previous. So
One last
sorry
question.
to geek out on the tech side there, but yeah. Yeah, Carl.
What about funding? I mean, there's a lot of dollars to do this. And, I personally think, we need to spend money now, even though it looks like too much money to get to the future. That even goes for high-speed rail, which I'm sure everybody on this call doesn't agree with, but, high-speed rail between the cities can reduce air traffic use, and which has implications for climate and other things. What's your sense of where the funding is going to come from, how viable it is, what you're hearing?
Yeah, and there's kind of like, countervailing forces here. There, like right now, there's at the federal level, there's this thing called the IIJA, the Infrastructure Jobs Act, which is a once in a generation funding stream that's going to be available for all this transportation in a sense, and so we're basically positioned really well for having done all this work in data assessment and adoption of a plan to get us here. So we'll be very competitive. That's a lot of people have sort of likened that pot of investment to the Federal Highways Act after World War II, where that essentially built the whole nation's interstate highway system. So once a generation, once every kind of 50, 100 years kind of thing is where it's about 5 to 10 times depending on the funding pool of what any previous federal allocation for funding. So our director likes to say SANDAG kind of gets more than their fair share just because we're pretty ideal sized county. We kind of speak as one voice at the federal government because we're one county. So we've been very successful in funds that are called discretionary, where they're not formula based, where it's not just by population. So we expect to get a lot of hopefully funds from that source. Locally, it's been a challenge, to be honest with you. Like I don't know if you've heard about the sort of road usage charge and VMT fee or whatever flavor of it you want to call it, but that's basically assigning a cost a couple cents a mile to provide more options. There was a lot of political uproar over that idea. It's powerful though. It can get you like $20 billion over 30 years if you flex that kind of source, even though it's just a couple cents a mile. But that's an option, but it's a challenging one. Sales tax is regressive. If you might, you buy something, right, doesn't mean you're actually using that transportation system. So it's decoupled, but it's something we have right now called Transnet. It's a half-cent sales tax that funds about $20 billion, also $20 billion of transportation. So more sales tax potentially in the future. So that's on the local side. Obviously, taxes are politically challenging. We have seen, though, those types of local funding generation will get about 3 to 4 cents of local and federal money to match it. So every dollar we can generate locally, we'll get another $3 or $4 from others just because we could generate that local dollar. So that's one thing that's hard to get the story out. So our Transnet, money has been able to really put local sales tax to work elsewhere. But just to be honest about some of the, feds want to throw a lot of money to creative transportation. We're ready to receive it. But at the same time, local generating, tax or fees is hard to do. So.
Well, thank you, Phil, for a wonderful overview of SANDAG. I think, the Q&A could go on all afternoon because it is fascinating and it does impact all of us. So I really appreciate your talents and all the information you've shared with us. Thank you for your valuable time today.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Thanks, everyone. Please feel free to reach out to me. I can give you my contact information if anything comes up after. Always love to chat about this stuff. I could talk about it for hours. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll send some of this information on to Susan and Judith.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Yay.
All right. Bye now. Thanks, everyone.
All right. So we want to celebrate our June birthdays, but of course the 4 individuals, your fellow Kiwanians that had a birthday already this month, no one's on the Zoom call, but next time you see them, be sure to wish them a happy birthday and hit them up for their birthday fine.
Hey, does anybody know how Eldon's doing?
I don't. I probably should call him.
I mean, the last time I saw him was when he was in rehabilitation, and
Yeah.
That was before COVID.
I sent a birthday card, but I've never actually met him.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of fines, how about some bills, bucks, or fines? Anybody have something happy or sad you want to share? You want to use the time?
I'll go in for $5 since I got to spend so much extra time with my daughter.
Nice.
Which was great.
I'll throw in 5. We just spent 3 days up in San Francisco to go to my son's wife's graduation from Stanford with her doctorate in neurolinguistics, which for in young children, which is pretty fascinating.
That's exactly the same degree I have. It's incredible.
Wow.
I'll do 5 for allowing me to be here today. It's very informative. Thank you.
Susan, I've got to throw in 20 just to say thank you to this club for helping us raise over $250,000 for Red Shoe Day this year. So thank you for being out there on the street way too early, freezing your fanny off, I know, in a June gloom day, but just so appreciate all the support for the club. Thank you.
Always love panhandling for you, Chuck. My favorite, I'll throw in 5 too, was someone donated money and wanted me to make sure that I knew that they went to high school with Chuck Day. And I'm like, of all people on the side of the corner, of course, they get the one that knows Chuck Day. So that
I think that was Julianne Pion, as I knew her way back when. So thank you.
Yeah, we had a great
Who
time.
doesn't know Chuck Day?
Yeah, and I'll put in another 5 for Tom Bauer and Monica Ball being the only 2 people that came to happy hour last Thursday. So Ruby and I spent a nice hour enjoying the sunshine. If you haven't been to Harbor and Sky Rooftop downtown, highly recommend it. But I'm hoping that we'll get a lot more people at our next evening social, which is going to be at Aquarius Bar and Grill, which Ryan Callan and Heidi Callan highly recommend this place. They have live music that apparently goes down, so we'll really be feeling the summer vibes for our next social. So I just wanted to make sure we give a shout out to Tom and Monica for keeping me company.
Good for you to do that.
That's cool. All right. For anybody else want to share any happy or sad dollars or bills, bucks? All right. If you, oh, Kevin, go for it. You are muted, Kevin.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Hey, I'll throw in 10 for all my cursing that I do in traffic after seeing that graph that Phil threw up there. That seems very complex. So I have a little more appreciation for everything there.
Oh, now that he showed his face, Susan, I got to throw another 10 in because I stiffed Kevin earlier. I was supposed to reach out to him, and now we've connected. So Judith, it's underway. I sent him a chat, and we'll talk more about Kiwanis. Thank you, Kevin, for your
yeah, for sure.
And it was great. I forgot to do a recap that we had our barbecue or get together.
We have recap. I have that coming in the presentation still. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So if anybody hasn't already received an invoice from Judith, you'll be getting one.
Absolutely.
Please pay it. Otherwise, she's going to be on your tail. So thank you for your generosity today. And so nice to always remember Bill Gibbs when we have these meetings. So for a quick recap of events, Doug, I don't know if you want to say anything more about your super spreader event, but an award was presented to you. We'd love to hear about that.
Well, this was the governor's dinner, visited a number of people, received awards as we can see right here. So it wasn't just me. So this was at a facility right in Mira Mesa, which was a very nice location. And then I have in fact been to the international convention at which we elected our new international president, Burt West from Denver, Colorado area, and his mother nominated him and got much more applause than he did. So I was sure to remind him about that. And all the people who should have won did, and all the Various changes to the bylaws were considered, and some were accepted and some were not. So I'm happy to talk about that with all of those who were so interested in those incredible Kiwanis International bylaws.
All right, more to come on that. Thank you. Hey, on May 29th, we had an amazing Kiwanis office cleanup. Your president, Mike Boland, was an all-star that day. He drug out tables and chairs and got rid of them, and then drug in a table that weighs something close to the Titanic. And there's Karina pushing it up the stairs. It was a group effort, but we also found a ton of great swag as modeled by Mike Boland in this photos. But we will continue to do a little purging at the office. There's some, very outdated stuff that needs to be recycled, and then of course we've got some terrific swag that will be available in the near future. So for those of you that want to swing by the office, Judith is typically there on Mondays, and always would welcome some extra hands going through some of the stuff. So more to come on that.
And happy to hand you any nonsense that you find in the office that you want to take home.
All right. Hey, on June 1st, there was a virtual trivia night. Karina, thank you for hosting that. Who won?
We had a pretty slim crowd because there's actually a lot of health things going on. Someone unexpectedly passed away, which is really sad. Rocky was in the hospital with a hernia or something, but so I think, we had Carol Ferris. I think it's Carol Ferris. Doug would know, but it was her birthday, and she ended up that she and another person from her club played, and they won. They almost got every single answer and mashup and everything correct. So it was really fun. But we're hoping to have some people from our club at the next one. It's always the first Wednesday of the month. You can just show up for as little or as long as you want. Just come and have some fun and raise some money. They make a little extra, and it goes to SLPs. So it is, still a fundraiser if you just show up and come have some fun.
Very cool. As mentioned, Red Shoe Day on June 6th. Wow, congratulations, Chuck. What a tremendous total. Really awesome mission. Great organization, and so important for our family. So thank you for all you do for Ronald McDonald House. Look at those red shoes. Karina, you want to pop in on the St. Augustine Key Club date?
Yeah, so we met in Balboa Park on Sunday. We had the dogs out, we had kids out, we had students, we had advisors. Both the advisors from the Key Clubs came. They were very appreciative that we did anything. We didn't have that many students show up, but we did have a few. And what we ended up doing was we had some old t-shirts that we tore into strips and then braided together to make dog toys that we donated to some local shelters. I think some went to the Humane Society, some went to Baja for dogs. So very fun just to get the kids the students to collaborate, which was nice. They did do a beach cleanup together a couple months ago, but the advisors said that the one club all went one way and the other club went the other way. But what was nice about this event is everyone was sitting at the same table, so more collaboration. So we're really excited about doing more collaboration. We're going to let them all have a good summer, and then looking forward to reviving our Key Clubs and being more involved with them now that they've figured out kind of their new normal. So it was great to meet Kevin's whole family. Judith was there. Heather brought Giant Panda, who always tries to eat my dog Ruby, who I brought, of course. So we had a good time and ate some Costco pizza, and it was great. So thank you for everyone who came, and we'll make sure we do it again.
Thank you. All right, that looks like social evening at Harbor and Sky. That's a wonderful example of what you can do when you come out on the monthly social evening. And we have, as Karina mentioned, the one coming up. In fact, let's talk about what's coming up. We have the morning aftermath cleanup along with I Love a Clean San Diego. So let's show some support for our favorite Steve Morris. We are hoping to have 5 people sign up and commit to this. So it'll be
or more.
But what a great time to get out to the beach the day after 4th of July and help clean up some of our local coastal areas. Again, the I Love a Clean San Diego is anticipating sign up so they can plan for our participation. Please go on to the club website to sign up so we can know who's coming. We'll give you more details like where to meet and, you know, obviously what to wear and what have you, but please try to get back to this community effort. And finally, we have our next virtual trivia night, as Karina said. It's the first Wednesday of the month, so that's July 6th. And then our club social on July 14th, Aquarius. Great advertisement. Sounds like the Callens have done the research for us and have vetted the place. So July 14th at 4:30, Aquarius Bar and Grill. And quick save the date. I know nobody has their 2023 calendars just yet, but if you have your virtual one or your one on your phone, please lock in February 15th for Laurels for Leaders at San Diego State. And then, of course, tomorrow we have a board and foundation meeting. Tomorrow morning, board at 7. Foundation will be coming on at 8. So make plans to get up early with the chickens. You know, the birds are singing and the sun's up nice and early these days. So good
except for me.
Except for Doug, who's 2 hours way ahead of us. He's already going to have a couple of coffees in him and he's ready. He'll be ready. All right. Is there anything else that we need to share with for the good of the group?
Great job, Susan.
Well, thank you. Well, that was the help of a real village, and that's Judith and Karina and Doug, and everybody's helped me. So thank you. Really happy to step in for our president.
Great. All right. Have a good week. See some of you tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome. Bye now.
Bye-bye.